On this episode of today's Shopsmith, we find a new home for a couple of my favorite accessories, and we take a trip out to the Northwest Artistry and Wood Show. You're not going to want to miss this one, that's for certain. Well, when I finally get to hang up the snow shovel for the last time, I know winter is finally over. Well, now that spring is officially here, it's kind of hard not to start thinking about the big spring and summer project, that being my camper van build. As I mentioned earlier though, before I could even think about doing any kind of jobs on the camper van, I had to take the winter and do a couple things. Number one, I had to find a new home for my joiner and my bandsaw, so I had to make a accessory stand. I'll show you that in just a little bit. Then I had to actually complete the bike project and get it ready to take out to the big Northwest Idaho Artistry and Wood competition. This is the first time I've ever entered anything into competition, so I wanted to take my time, or make sure I had enough time to complete that project so it would show the best as it could when it was sitting on the floor out at that big event. So we started out with the accessory stand itself, and that turned out to be a little bit more interesting than originally thought. The problem here though is when I built the today's Shopsmith studios, I didn't leave a whole lot of room for extra accessory stands. All the walls are pretty much filled. Out of this entire space, I did see one small tiny little niche that might accommodate two accessories. So the first thing that I did was I simply placed the bandsaw and the joiner in that space on the floor. And boy, although a tight fit, I might be able to get an accessory stand in there, I thought. I did consider buying a pre-made accessory stand, but because it's such a small space, they just wouldn't work, so I had to make a custom job out of this. Of course, any good woodworker knows that a good project starts with a really good, detailed set of plans. So I spent probably 2 weeks drawing, measuring, making sure everything was just perfect, and I came up with a set of plans that are pretty doggone detailed. Now, come on over here and take a look at these detailed plans. Look at that. Is that something? All the measurements, right down to a very detailed cut list. That's where a good project starts. Well, from a more serious note, the measurements were pretty important just because of the limitation of the space itself. One consideration was the actual height of the, and this is something you might want to consider if you're going to build an accessory stand, the height of the accessory stand itself. I didn't want it too tall, didn't want it too short. I wanted to be able to simply lift bandsaw or joiner off of that stand, be able to pivot over to the Mark V and drop down easy. You don't want to have to be lifting the thing way up or bringing it way down. So I took a lot of time making sure those measurements were correct. At the same time I wanted everything correct, measurement-wise, I wanted to make sure I didn't go overboard on cost. So I thought it might be kind of fun to see how little I spent on that. So I went to Lowe's. I just kind of lucked out on a Saturday morning early and was walking down the lumber aisle, and they had a rack of closeout materials, and I found a couple of 6-foot 2x10s that they were selling for $9.85 a piece. Less than $20. So I grabbed those, and that's what this entire accessory stand is made up of, held together with the lag bolts that I already had available. So now I had my detailed blueprints all ready to go, and I had my material. Matter of getting out there and starting cutting pieces up. So the project started with me cutting the pieces for the top itself. I'm going to need 2 of these pieces to get to the right width. I'll down and glue those up. After I finished the top, I went ahead and cut the pieces for the legs themselves. Needed 2 of those, of course. After that, I trimmed everything up, made sure it was the exact length. Did that all the way around, both the tabletop and the legs. Then I went ahead and did my doweling for the tabletop. Glued and clamped those up. Notice I'm using opposing sides for the clamps. That way everything stays flat. I've had these clamps for a long time. And I let that set up. Make sure you clean that glue off too. And I set that aside to dry. The legs were a little bit different because I had to put some wings on each side of the leg itself just to give it a wider base, make it a little bit more stable. So I did the same thing. I cut the pieces and then doweled and glued those up. Made sure they were clamped up good. So when the legs dried, I went ahead and clamped up the pieces for the cross members, marked those and cut those. Then I shaped the bases, added my casters. Those are 80-pound copper casters. I had those laying around anyway, so I didn't include those in the cost. Really efficient, easy way to do. Probably should have used larger casters, but it's on a flat surface, it rolls around pretty easy. Flipped her up. You notice I used an accessory base. The one accessory base is going to house both accessories. And then of course I fitted everything on the base or the stand itself. And there it is. Functional, sturdy, heavy duty. I guess the real question is it going to fit in that space easily? So I rolled it over in that little niche, and boy, it just barely fit. Had to worry about the sprinkler system, electrical wiring conduit, and the control box there. You can see over here on this right side, just barely made it. So all in all, the accessory stand turned out actually a little bit better than I thought it would. It'll support those two accessories for a long time to come. With that done, and now it's about the end of February, I had to make sure the last major work for the winter was to complete the bike build. There was a few things that needed to be done to clean up that project. The whole thing needed to be completely reassembled. Then I had to still make some extra parts and pieces to finish everything up. So that's what I did next. And this had to be done in a pretty timely fashion. It had to be done by at least end of March. The artistry and wood competition was held the first week of April. So I had to get moving. Just on a side note, the bike project I'm completing for the woodworking competition is actually my second bike. My first one was more conventional. It was a solid oak bicycle. This is one that I ride through the city in my Chicago location. It truly is a daily rider. So the first step in completing the bike project, I had to make some brackets for the chain guard. It came on pretty good. And I had to do the same thing for the front fender. Front fender I built in January and February. Made brackets for that, mounted it. Everything worked out well there as well. Of course, any bike rider knows you never park a bike without being able to lock it up. So for some reason I decided I needed to make a matching wood lock. So I did that, did the finish. And it came out really, really well. Works nice. The pedals, this is the final version out of 5 different tries I made. It turned out well. The bike stand, this was a really nice design I came up with. It holds that heavy bike real nice. It really is hard to believe that this whole project started out with layering about 122 pieces of 1/8" Baltic birch over different molds, a bottom mold and a top mold. That took a long time for all that to glue up and dry, and it worked out really well. Of course, they did the saddle out of the same Baltic birch. The hardest part of this whole thing was really the finish. I'm dealing with 2 finishes, a painted finish and a natural finish. But boy, by taking my time and doing it about 3 times, the whole thing came out real well. So now it was time to load the bike up, take it to the jump center, and enter it in the Idaho Artistry and Wood Competition. And what a great competition. The building itself, the first time I'd been into it, it's a $70 million facility donated basically to the city of Boise, Idaho for special events just like this, educational events. Really an impressive build. We were on the 5th floor here. Big facility. I came in pretty early with my entry. Not all the items were in there, but boy, the first day of the event, I was absolutely blown away. There are some amazing, amazing woodworkers out there, and they are creating some absolute breathtaking projects. There's 5 different divisions in this show. I'm in the woodworking division. They had the turning division. You have the musical instrument division. There's a scroll saw division. There's even a gourd and a carving division. Look at the scroll saw winner. This was some kind of a chess set. When I finally made it over to where they had placed the bike, well, without a doubt, I was quite surprised. The bike actually won first place in its division, as well as an overall show special award. That was really, again, quite a surprise. The bike really did look good sitting there amongst all the other big fancy woodworking projects. I wasn't too embarrassed. That's something. And the public seemed to like it a whole lot too. Wow.
I mean, the artistry involved in it too, and the work. I'd be afraid to ride it.
A lot of detail. Look at the pedals. And so we could say the bike project was a big success. Certainly well worth the effort, and a lot of fun to do. So in between work on the accessory stand and the bike itself, I did spend an awful lot of time this winter researching camper van builds, conversions. I spent a lot of time. I must have looked at hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos on a camper van build and camper van conversions. And it is amazing how this has exploded. Maybe because of COVID, who knows? There just seems to have a real resurgence in interest of creating some kind of a mobile living area. I did find one particular couple. It's called Lewis the Van. Look that up on YouTube. But they do some really incredible work, really fine work. Their finished projects are as fine as any of the stuff I saw at that artistry and wood competition. They're young people. In fact, most of the build people that I viewed on YouTube were fairly young. But this couple, they can't be much older than 30, maybe 35 years old. They started out by building a van for themselves to live in full time. And out of that, they seem to have created a very lucrative business for themselves. They now build vans for other folks too. You need to get into YouTube and take a look at Lewis the Van. I'm taking one of their designs and kind of making it fit into my E-Series van. Most of the things that you see on YouTube, they're using the fancy Transits and ProMasters. I don't see any reason why you can't take something like my E250 here and do the same thing. So that's what is on the agenda for the spring and summer as a major project. It's going to be a detailed project. I'm going to walk you through the wiring, wall construction, cabinet construction. We'll talk about the whys I'm doing this and the why nots I'm doing this. It should be a lot of fun. First thing you want to do though is make sure you subscribe. And once you do, you'll see that you're in the running for some special things we got coming up during the summer too. With that, I'm going to get busy and start working on that van. I'll see you next time on today's Shopsmith.